You ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest, Larry Camp. Larry is somebody who has read Nobody Knows. They just want to think like they do. You know why. He believes that he has some great, compelling, and inspirational stories to share with us. Now, some of the things that he can offer is he definitely has a no BS approach to life, knowing that everyone is going to experience good times, bad times, and a whole lot of in between. That's for sure, Larry. Larry got his degree in sports broadcasting and worked for a time at an NBC station. He also spent 22 years in the corporate world, retiring from Shell Oil. These years in the corporate world enabled him to travel the country and talk about this life. So, welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. And this show is based on my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And we have had some situations since the pandemic hit for sure. So I'd like to start off by asking if you have a time in your business or personal life where you experienced a difficult situation and how you got back on track.
Well, yeah. And I think I've had, like people, a lot of difficult situations. Part of mine, I guess, that might make mine a little bit more unique is that I was born into a very high demand religion that controlled almost every aspect of my life. And without getting into a lot of detail, I got married at a very early age because that's what we were encouraged to do. We were not allowed to have any kind of sex or anything outside of marriage. So, you meet somebody, and I knew a girl for 6-7 years. We got married, and we were told that if we followed the leaders' counsel, and that is to, obey all the rules, get married in their temple and so forth, we would be blessed. And after 18 months, she's like, I don't want to be married anymore. Oh. And so that was just devastating to me because I believed that there was like one person for every person. And when I realized that wasn't the case, I had to kind of reevaluate what my beliefs were and everything else. But that was just one. I've had a number of things.
Yes, that's something that happens, and many times we raise our children in one religion and they go off and do another, and it's kind of one of those things that happens where sometimes the religion is just not a good fit, but it's something that sticks in our head. So we have those beliefs of, oh my gosh, she left and this is against what I've been taught is supposed to happen. What's this about? And so that's a whole identity crisis that we get in life. And I think we have many of those as we go on. So that's really important to I don't know, to be able to go through at a young age. You were really young still.
Well, yeah, I think the majority of people are the religion that their parents were. I mean, you're born, if your parents, and my parents were Mormons. So, I mean, being born in Provo, Utah, while they were going to BYU, what are the odds I'm not going to be Mormon, right? So, right. Yeah. But at some point, like you mentioned, everybody kind of has to make a decision for themselves. Am I going to continue with this? Am I going to go a different route? And it's a crossroads that many of us that grew up in religion, come to at some point.
Yes. And then I don't know, for myself, I too had I had many different families growing up, and 10 to 13 homeless and all these different things. And I was raised Catholic, but then I went to all these other homes. And, through my life, at one point, I think 13 and a half, I did foster care until 15, and then went out on my own. So it's very interesting because I got to live with different people that had completely different religions and see what that was about. And it was like a field trip to get to learn all these. I had to go to the temple or the church or the whatever it was, and depending on the week it was, and then I got to see how the religion was and how the people lived based on that or through it. And I don't know, it gave me a little bit of an idea that we're all these beautiful, incredible people, no matter what the religion is, but the religion was something that held people together at the same time. When you lose somebody, when you go through a tough time, to have some kind of a spiritual something does help these practices that we have in our lives, traditions, cultural traditions, faith traditions, whatever they are. There's something that gives us peace when we don't have any peace. So,
right. And I think if you grow up in a religion that tells you that they're the only true one, and then all of a sudden you find out, whoops, maybe that's not the case.
right.
Then you end up writing a book like this right here that says nobody knows. They just want you to think they do.
Yeah.
And the reason I wrote that is because I came to the realization that if I meet somebody and they start to tell me about their religious views or this or that, or whatever, it could be that they believe there's aliens walking amongst us or whatever, I'll just simply say, I believe, you believe.
Right. Yes.
And I'm good with that. As long as they're not hurting other people or impacting people in a negative way, you can believe whatever you want. I don't have any problem with that. But I consider myself now a humanist, as before I would have considered myself, a Mormon or whatever. So, now I just try to, like you said, treat people kindly, help people that are a little less fortunate. And, if I think we all do that, and we all get along a lot better, not get too caught up in our own personal beliefs that we've got to try to ram down other people's throats. So.
So true. So true. And I have many people that I know that have left one religion and are looking and seeking something. And they've gone to every single study and course about every single one. And it's like they're trying to replace one book of rules for the other book of rules. and it's interesting because they were raised with this book of rules, so they had to get away from it, but they had to quickly find something to replace it. And that to me is like, okay, but it's all about, but what if, so it's a personal choice, and it's a beautiful thing to have that freedom. That's something that we are blessed with in this country, definitely. And no matter what, and the chance to be able to study and understand other cultures and religions is something that connects us to people. So
and Sheila, you mentioned, I was going to say, you mentioned that you lived with a lot of different people when you were growing up, and that you got, you were made aware of different religions, different cultures and things. And that right there in itself is an education, because if you never are able to get outside of this bubble that maybe you are living under, then that's all you believe. That's all you know. You don't realize there's anything more in the world. But I was fortunate that my parents ended up moving to different parts of the country, job related, of course. But that meant that we were now with different groups and seeing different ideas. Many times, we lived in San Diego. There was only 4 Mormons in my whole school, and one of them was my sister. So, you need to get along with other people. And I think that's the thing, is that when you're not living in a community where everybody thinks and looks and views the world the same as you, then you get educated, and that's what is really good. And I think that the more we can educate ourselves on whatever it is, I'm not a big person who likes to talk politics or religion at this point in my life, but I do believe that being educated and understanding, what's going on is a good thing.
Yes, and to be able to understand the people. To understand all of humanity is to understand the cultures, the religions, the beliefs, and where people are coming from, because then you can meet them where they're at. and okay, that's what that's about. There's a lot of unwritten rules that may not even come up that you would know coming from your background, your parents, the Mormon religion or whatever religion. It could be X, and those unwritten rules come to the table in a business meeting in their own
Right.
way. And if you're not aware of what those kind of things are, it's like you're missing a big part of the conversation or getting into a relationship. To have these conversations before getting into a committed relationship, because dating is great, but then if you have to like live together and maybe have children together, whatever, build a life together, these conversations are so many unwritten rules that show up.
Yeah.
And
And you have to, and you have to be able to change and adapt. And I came up, when I entered broadcasting in 1983, it was very rare to have females doing the news, or they were just kind of entering into that business, really, more behind the scenes and things like that. So 1983, our newscaster was male, the weatherman was male. I was doing sports. Now, this was a small station in Farmington, New Mexico. So, but I think it's also gave you a glimpse to what was going on even in the larger cities at that time. Now, when you turn news, like just this morning, it was all female. There wasn't one male on the broadcast, and it just shows you that some people like I like the old days. No, you know what? I like where we are now is in terms of women being treated more equally, being able to. I mean, they're still not equal, right? We know that there's still a pay difference between men and women, but we're making great strides, and that's what I'm saying. So some people just kind of like to remember the glory days or what they believe were the glory days, whereas I actually embrace, the changes going on in the world. And I think that sometimes you mentioned when we started this podcast at the very beginning, what is something that's happened to you that you had to kind of adapt or move on from, or, another thing that happened 3 years ago was our 31-year-old son, Dusty, had a ruptured iliac artery and died in an hour. I was at a softball tournament in Las Vegas. My wife was in Hawaii because our daughter had just given birth to our first grandchild, and he was in Phoenix, Arizona. So that event changed our lives. Because back to the religion, when we were active Mormons, we had it all figured out. We had a plan. We knew that when you died, where you were going, what was going to happen. But we had left Mormonism a couple of years prior to that. So now what? Where'd he go? Where is he? So we had to be okay with the fact that we don't know. I mean, we hope to see him again, but and a loss of a child or even a spouse or whatever, it really changes your outlook on life and maybe what's important, and you can not sweat the small stuff.
yeah, so that is something that I have a similar story. Back in December 2019, I lost my youngest son, and he was 22 also. So it's this, and he went to sleep. He had a heart condition, Wolff Parkinson White syndrome, and he just didn't wake up. He had a lot of caffeine that day, nothing else really out of the ordinary, but this happens. And it was really a difficult journey for the whole family. I had adult children moved home before the now this is right before the pandemic hit. So for us, we attend like a non-denominational, like agape center that's like everybody. And so we had a beautiful service, and we found a beautiful place, a resting place for him that regarding religions, we felt very guided. My daughter and I went looking, and we felt so guided to this place because it was up on a hill. You see the Hollywood sign in the distance and all the birds and nature and everything. And there's a Christian, a Catholic, and there's a Buddhist monk. And they chant every day. And I was like, oh, he likes music. There's music playing, and there's all these different religions represented, all the ethnic. It's a huge cemetery. And so they're all there. And I thought, whoever visits, wherever they're from, if they have a faith tradition, it's probably here or represented definitely. And so they're somewhere, it's really for them. And for whoever visits, whoever has a connection. He was, almost engaged. He was dating this girl for like 4 years, that they were so in love, whatever. And so there's this whole group and a very large family, 6 kids in my family. I adopted 3. And so that's what we chose. And it just gave me peace knowing that there's somewhere for everyone if they need it. And so it was really for them. And that I brought to me, my personal thought was, okay, I feel a presence and I feel something, and every now and then, and there's a whole grieving that happens for parents that society, I think they give you 7 days or 6 days off work for grieving. I mean, that's like, you can't even feel in 6 days. You can barely, I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, it was not, it was more than 6 days, that's for sure. And so think about that. That's something. And it's a process that takes a while. Holidays are still hard for my children too. The ones that were the best friends, the closest to him, especially because I had a big age gap. The ones that were, they were best friends and siblings. Wow. These holidays and times we still talk. And there was a permission that we had, that we have permission to cry, to scream, to yell, to do whatever we need to do. Wake me up at 3 a.m. if you need to talk. And that's how we got through it. And it was okay. And I think that society, there's that whole thing, laugh, and the whole world laughs with you, cry, and you cry alone. And it's the truth.
Right.
But people don't know how to respond. What do you say? They don't know how do you feel? How can they even help? And, or maybe if we don't talk about it, it'll just go away and we don't have to feel your sadness. I'm not sure.
First, I'm sorry for your loss. It's a club that nobody wants to be a member of. That's for sure.
Exactly.
And there is no rules when it comes to grieving. I mean, you're right. The world, I mean, rightfully so. They move on with their lives and things. And then us that have experienced this loss, we'll never get over it. We think about these children every day. And on the 1 month anniversary of my son's passing, I went and got a tattoo on my wrist. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it says Dusty there. But I got that and I put it so that the word is facing out. His name is facing out. So if I reach my hand out to somebody, they can see that. And so people will say, "Oh, you got a tattoo? What is that?" And then I get to talk about my son. Yeah. So that's the whole reason for doing it. I believe that as long as we mention this name of our child, then that child is still relevant and that child is still part of our lives. And so, yeah, exactly. And just you talking about your son and me talking about my son today, we're remembering them. And I think that's important.
Yes. And yesterday, I actually had 2 different people had lost their children, an adult and a baby. And they called me because I shared my story and we talked. And so this is something that the communication is open. And they know it's a safe place to talk about. And then they wouldn't call some other people. And maybe we don't even talk that much. But we had a parent-to-parent talk. And then it was like, okay, now these are the things we're going to do. And that whole book that I wrote, my second chapter is on grief, feel your feelings. And it goes through, if I had a best friend that just lost a child or a loved one, any loved one, it's kind of that point where you're in a fog. You're in a state of shock, and you need somebody. Sometimes you'd love to have somebody say, okay, let's get through these steps that what do you want? What's your choices on these steps to walk you through until you're back to being able to walk yourself and be able to go on a little bit. And it's going to take a long time. So
did you write that chapter after you lost your son? Before?
No, I wrote it before. And
okay.
Yep. So it was definitely a gift to myself, and
Yeah.
something that definitely all my kids actually read the book before, and then they reread that chapter during that time, and it really helped. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that's my dog.
Yeah. Well, I actually did a reissue of my book because my book came out just, 6 months or maybe a year before my son passed. And what I did was, because these are print on demand books, it's pretty simple. I can go and write another chapter and just insert it into the book. And that's what I did. Um, and it was therapeutic for me to write a chapter about losing a child and about talking about my son and about what happened. And so, yeah, I actually just, so my books, somebody said, hey, I thought your book came out before it does. And yep, I added a chapter. So, but yeah, so again, and we all handle it differently, but you don't get through this life without some stumbles and some issues and some things you have to overcome, and everybody does. And my podcast is just, it's called Nobody Knows Your Story, and people just come on and they tell their story, and they're very interesting. And sometimes people say, oh, I don't have an interesting life, I haven't done it. But then you sit down and talk with them for 45 minutes and it's like, you've had an interesting life and an impactful life. And yeah, so it's fun.
Yes, that's great. Now I'd love to hear a little bit more about what's in some of the other chapters in your book. If you could give some examples.
Well, we've been talking a little bit about it. Because my book is somewhat of a memoir, I actually start off and talk about my story growing up Mormon. I actually mentioned briefly how we found out about, that for us it wasn't a good fit anymore. And it was actually from our daughter, who was attending BYU of all places. She came home at Christmas break and she says, hey, what have you guys heard about the church essays? And we're like, she goes, yeah, the church came out with these essays where they they're different from everything I was taught growing up. And so we'd never heard of them. We read them. And so at that point, then we did some further investigating. And for us, we just couldn't align ourselves anymore with that religion. Now, so I talk about that in the book a little bit, but not much, because I try to be respectful also of my family and my wife, Judy's family, because they're all still members of that faith for the most part. There's a couple that have left. Most of them are still in. So we're very respectful. And, we haven't had it. We haven't lost anybody. You know how some religions, they ban you or banish you if you leave or something. Nah, we haven't experienced any of that. Okay. But, so my book really just, as I've gone through my life, and of course, a lot of it was in the corporate world where I ended up working for Shell Oil. I ran all these Jiffy Lube stores, if you're familiar with those. And I had the West Coast, so I was traveling all the time. But it gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people and to learn some skills that really, yes, they're great in the business world, but they also work with your friends and with your family and everything too. And then I talk about things like being the organizer, because I don't know about you, but when I was a little boy, I wanted to play baseball after school or something. And I'd say to my friends, hey, we should do this. Yeah, we should do it. And that'd be the end of it. So finally I decided, okay, why don't we do this? Let's meet here at 3:30. And all my life, I've been this organizer. So I would put together softball teams and go out of state and play tournaments and this and that. People are very willing to participate as long as you do the organizing. And so we talk about that. And I think that what these are is, my book is really just a series of chapters dealing with, my thoughts, my take on life, but also I think things that are very similar for all of us. And these are character traits, things that we all have, and some choose to maybe emphasize some of them more than others. I'm sure you're an organizer in your own way. I'm sure many people are, but yeah, so I just talk about some of those types of things. And when I get together and I speak in front of groups, what I usually talk about, depending on who the group is, I'll just talk about how we navigate this world and this life, and do so in a way that we can say at the end of the day, hey, I had a good day. This was a good day. I was able to do this. I was able to do that. I would help somebody. But my employees, if you went up to them at any time when I was working in that corporate world and said, what's Larry's motto? They'd say, fun is good. Because that was my motto. And I had a big banner made and I'd put it up at our meetings, and it's fun is good. And so we would talk about how do we create fun at a time when there's stress and maybe turnover at the store, and we don't have enough people to get the cars in and out. But how can we create a fun environment when that is going on?
Yeah.
Hey, there's times where it's difficult, no doubt. But I mean, at the end of the day, we can look back and say, well, that was tough, but we got through it, and a little fun. Then, that's kind of what it's all about too. So, we just can't escape the drama and the trauma that's going to happen to us at times in our life. And so, I've just always been a glass is half full guy, and I just try to, carry that out, and with the people I'm with. I used to tell my children, I'm sure you did too, Sheila, that you have choices when it comes to who you want to spend your time with. Why not spend your time with people who are going to build you up and make you a better person rather than tear you down and make you have depressive thought, whatever. So yeah, I just think that I just try to see the positive in the world. I know there's a lot of negative if you watch the news every day, and my advice to people is don't watch the news every day.
Yes.
Check in once in a while, but you don't have to watch it 3 times a day, like some of my family.
Oh, yes. We could be very concerned right now if we watch the news too much because it's crazy times for sure. Yeah, these are some times, I'll tell you. And, it's something that I remember during the pandemic with my adult kids home. I never really had a lot of TV going on in my life because I worked and I traveled the world for 7 years. I did all these great things and had fun. I actually brought the youngest 2 with me when I was traveling and did a lot of training with Tony Robbins and had a blast. And we learned from everywhere and went everywhere on the planet practically. So I'm home and they're turning on the news when this all started and nobody knows. And, I'm like freaking out about this because of the news. And I finally said, please, can we just have like time for the news and time not for the news where we can listen to happy music and just dance around or I just can't take it anymore. And it actually helped them as much as it helped me. It really was a lot for me. And so it's nice to be aware, and obviously you need to know what's going on, especially nowadays, because it could affect your work or your, what's going on in your city or state. But then there's what's going on in your home. And how can that, and your community, and how can you connect to people and have that fun? So that's so important. And that fun thing, I think that's something I also brought into my life throughout the years that made all the difference. I remember being a very young girl. I had gift stores starting at 23 going forward, big 5,000 square foot stores. And I would have fun. I would have I would go to, this is California. So I would go to 3rd Street, Santa Monica, 3rd Street Promenade, and I would find the musicians on the street. And I would say, would you like to perform in front of a big group? And they would drive over to my first store, and they would drive over and perform on the weekends. I was the only store open, and all the restaurants are open. All the other stores go away. I'm making 3 times profit. And I'm younger than anybody there that owns a store. And I'm just having fun. Everybody eats their food and they hear the music. They come over, I give them free tea and I sell the tea too. And they buy all kinds of things and we're dancing around because this was my fun. I had to bring fun to work because that was my business. I had to run it. And so I always had fun. And then later I got hired to work in politics. And they said, what's your political beliefs? And I said, well, free spirit. I didn't have a political party, but I was hired because I could work with people in groups and lead. And it was, okay, get out the vote for this and that. And it was a lot of nonpartisan things, raising all these kids that I worked on. And so, education for all these things. And so it was that, and it was because it was fun, people showed up. And when the boring, maybe they knew a lot more. They did. I know they knew way more about politics than I did, but they didn't know about people and fun. And so it was boring and they'd leave. So then, please, Sheila, come back and help with this, organize this, we'll pay you. And that's how that kind of showed up. And so fun, think about it, for kids right now, they're stuck home. Maybe the homeschooling, depending on your state where you live, the rules are crazy, or they're sent home every few weeks because of a outbreak or I don't know what. But so then they're home and they're bored So you got to make it a little more fun. You can't just say, do your homework and, it's not school.
Yeah, and I mentioned to you that my involvement with Hawaii, and there's still a condo that I take care of over on the island of Maui in Kihei. And so last year, pandemic, I mean, we were pretty booked for the whole year. All of a sudden, people would be like, "Hey, we need to cancel. Sorry, we got to cancel." And so we were like refunding for like a solid year, almost from like March of 2020, I guess it was, all the way through the end of the year. And I don't think we had people starting to kind of trickle back until like maybe January or February of this year. And even now, and we went over for a few weeks. We moved from Maui back here to the mainland a few years ago. But like I say, I still take care of that condo, and I'm very involved, and we still go quite a bit. And so when we were there, I still notice the same things that I like. The spirit of aloha that I feel from the people that live there. Of course, the weather, the ocean. We're big into the ocean. We all those things were still there. So if you didn't know there was a pandemic or something going on, you just think everything was normal, but it wasn't. So, and that's kind of the world we're living in right now. People, for the most part, are kind of like ready to move on. And gosh, we were down for a year and a half. Let's get on with life. But yet you have to still kind of be careful. And if you're flying somewhere, you probably have to wear a mask, and you have to do these things. And if you're going to Hawaii, you have to show proof of vaccination. And when we went, we had to do a 72-hour in advance negative test as well, which was a little stressful. Mm-hmm. But so, yeah, I'm not sure if those things will go away, that we may always have something, or I say always, but maybe for the next few years, we have something that's, I don't know, because we talked about the news, right? I don't watch it every day, but if I skip 3 days and watch it, I really haven't missed anything, because they're talking about the same things they talked about 3 days earlier. And, so a lot of times it takes a while before they actually know what they're talking about. They might say, hey, booster shots might be coming. Well, wait a week, and they say booster shots might still be coming. Right. And then eventually, they're here. So it's like, I just kind of don't worry about it too much until it's something to worry about. But you just have to navigate it. You have to get through it. And, for me, Hawaii has always been kind of one of those spots, that has brought me peace. And it's been something that's been a part of my life since I was a teenager. So I've just always enjoyed it.
Nice. Yes, that's something. Hawaii is one of the places that some of my kids want to go back to. We used to go once or twice a year to Hawaii, and now with all the restrictions, we're like, not everybody wants to go. But we have friends who visited us from Hawaii. They were actually some of the first people that flew over and visited us because they were like, well, we did all these things and we just travel, and we could not travel, so it wasn't a problem for them. But there's a magic and an energy there, and those islands definitely, that it's a little different, and it is a little spiritual, at least for me. When I go, oh my gosh, I could just feel things and hear things that I don't know. It's pretty cool. Now I've gone to just, I guess, the main island, and then what was the island that we went to? Kauai.
Was it very quiet and laid back and not very many people? If that was then you went to Kauai.
Yeah, then we went to Kauai. Well, but we went to like a Tony Robbins relationship event there a few times. And so that was different, to say the least. And so we had a blast, and so that was something. And there's an energy, I guess, in each island. It might even feel different. The energy.
It does to me. Yeah, it does to me for sure. I mean, I went to school on Oahu. Oahu's Honolulu, which is a big city, so I would never go there because I just felt like I was in Los Angeles or something. But if you stay over on the north shore of Oahu, it's pretty nice. My daughter lived there for 6 years because her husband's in the Coast Guard and they were stationed there. And so we'd stay over there, and we felt at home. It was great. And that's how Maui feels to us, because Maui is geographically a little bit larger than Oahu, but has about 1/8 the population. So we just never felt like, we were, there's no traffic. There's not even a freeway on Maui. I mean, it's very different.
Yes. So that is. And I mean, I have traveled to so many beautiful islands, Fiji, obviously, to island retreat vacation place there quite a few times. And there's something, it's like the world just shifts and it's quiet and it's peaceful. And sometimes we need that.
We
So
do. Yeah. And I encourage people, because I run into people that go, yeah, Hawaii was okay, but it didn't do much for me. Like, fine, it's okay. I mean, you certainly don't want everybody wanting to go to Hawaii. So that's fine. But whatever it is, if you have a place, we live here. If I took my camera and showed it out my window over here, we have a huge red mountain that we live right behind here, in front of, I guess. And so around here in southern Utah, where I am right now, we're less than an hour from Zion National Park. We have all these beautiful red mountains. And some people feel exactly about these red mountains the same way I do about Hawaii. And they just feel it's a magical place. They feel that there's a spiritual feeling that they have when they're walking on these mountains or on these trails and things. And so I get it. I totally do. So yeah,
yes.
it affects people differently, and whatever that is in your life that gives you that special feeling, then you need to do more of it.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And that was something for me. I was guided to move my main home to a beautiful lake community that is kind of away. We're in the city and we have everything, but we have a lake, and it's a different feel. And I said, I want my life, like, every day to be on vacation. And this was before the pandemic, and but not too far ahead. So it was right before I lost my son. Actually, I did the move, and then the kids moved over with me, most of them. So that was, I ended up buying a big house, and people were like, "Why are you going to buy a big house?" I said, "Well, it was the same price as the little houses, and I used to do real estate years ago, so I kind of know it's better to get more square footage when you got to go sell in the future." So, and then everybody will visit. Well, they did. They visited all right. Now they live here, so it does work out, and it's something. Design your environment. It doesn't matter where you're placed. I think it's make your home, whatever your office, that environment really makes a difference. People walk into my home and they're like, "Oh, I want to stay. I feel welcome. I want to relax. I could talk." It's a whole different feel, and it's not perfect. It's by far not perfect, but it's comfortable and it's safe, and that's what I wanted with my home, and and there's the outdoors and all these beautiful things that you go to the lake and take a boat ride. Everybody comes over, takes a boat ride with us, whatever. So that's what I wanted to design and live. And we have a choice, even when I lived in places that were not perfect. That was something that I created. So, I wrote this book. I bought this beautiful home after traveling 7 years. And after I did my travels, I was like, okay, I'm done. I need to have a home again. And because I rented homes out full time and just traveled full time. Literally, I saw everything on the bucket list. So I bought a home in Ventura, California. Day that I finished designing it and making it that beautiful, peaceful place was the night. I'm driving home from a long day at work. I just want to go home and rest. And we had the Ventura fire and I lost everything.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Oh, wow, I have to put this." I mean, like, the other car, everything was gone. Cat was gone, which was probably the hardest. And so I had to go stay at I had a prefab mobile home that I rented out to Airbnb, like vacation rental. It was 3 units and a little shed in the back. And I stayed in the shed, the 400 square foot shed. And everybody wanted to stay because they lost their home too. And this was it was the most interesting thing because it was a 5-star vacation. People had their honeymoon in my vacation mobile home. The canyon. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's like the energy that was created and the way it was designed, and it had this yoga deck and the view, and it was beautiful and peaceful, and people went there to get away from it all. I paid pennies for the place, so it's not about, it was a very humble place. And, I used some principles and got sent somewhere else and ended up in Beverly Hills and had a beautiful home there that is now rented out, and I'm at the lake. But that showed me that it doesn't matter. how humble. I mean, I think I paid $35,000 for that little mobile home. And it was making me an income of 6 to 8 thousand a month. and it and it
Wow.
and people were safe there. And when the fires hit, they had a home. And
Yeah.
it was like, and it cost very little. And so it was all about the feeling.
Yeah. And that's a nice area. My cousins grew up in Oxnard, and I spent a lot of time there in my younger days. But, you were talking about losing that home.
Hmm.
And we talked about grief earlier.
Yeah.
It's very easy to associate grief with the loss of a loved one. But, when you lose your religion or you lose a home in a fire like that, that brings on some grief also. And that can take some time to get over. And, you look at all these fires that are going on in the West right now, particularly California. A lot of people have lost their homes. I used to have a store when I told you I ran all the Jiffy Lubes on the West Coast. I had one in Paradise, California.
Yeah.
And when they had that fire, the campfire, I think it was 2 years ago, the whole town was wiped out basically. And so it was really interesting. And a lot of people, they grieved and they went through a real hard time. And I remember when I was there one day at that particular store in Paradise, talking with this guy, and I thought, boy, he's familiar to me. Seems so familiar. And he was kind of quirky. He was wearing Birkenstocks and had on some shorts. And he was talking about taking his motorhome and driving to Vegas to show his art because he's too stressed to fly. He couldn't handle flying. And so he leaves, and he said he lived there in the area, and he left. And one of my employees goes, "You know who that was?" I go, "He seemed very familiar." He goes, "Well, that was Radar from MASH."
Oh,
And yeah.
wonder
So,
you-
I mean, Berghoff. Yeah, if you remember Gary. So I knew he was familiar to me, but sometimes when you see people out of in an unfamiliar situation, they just doesn't seem,
Right.
you don't know who they are, even though you kind of recognize them, but so I'm sure he lost his home too, is what I'm saying. It's a rough time. So yeah, when you lost that house, I'm sure that was devastating in its own way.
Right. It is. So in life, that's something that we have those up and downs. It's your book and my book, and it's the story of life. And it's something that we don't want the bad things. It's not like we say, okay, let's have a pandemic. It's not something we willed. But these things are just part of life. And one of the beautiful gifts I had as a young girl, when I was staying with grandparents, about 4 or 5 years old, my grandmother would get with all these other women in grandmother age. So they were in their 70s to 80s. And they came, this was LA, California. So they're from all over the world. And they just happened to live in the neighborhood. And they were friends. And they would have tea. And I'm like to be seen and not heard in the corner. And they would talk about their stories. And it was living history for me. And it was their adventures. And I thought, as this little 5-year-old kid, I thought, oh, I'm going to have some grand adventures too. And I'm going to be okay like they are. I'm going to be good. And so those stories stuck with me. And those ladies, I actually, until they all passed away, I had them in my home. I had them for Thanksgiving and holiday meals. They were part of my family, and they got to share their stories with my children. And it really gave us a lot of strength. So the stories aren't new. We just are living them for the first time.
Yeah. And we learn from others. We know that. I mean, when you were 5 years old hearing these stories, it gave you a desire to go out and do some of those things. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I ask people when they're on my podcast. Talk about your life. And if there's certain things that impacted you in your youth that, kind of sent you down a certain trajectory, then certainly you need to talk about that. And they do. And for me, I mean, I don't know. I always liked sports. I always liked music. My dad was big into music. Both my parents sang in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, which, a lot of people have heard of, and that was kind of a big deal. So, I've been to over 200 concerts, and I've seen Jimmy Buffett 13 times. Now, so when you say fun is good, can you imagine having more fun than being at a Jimmy Buffett concert? So, but yeah, we're impacted, and we're little kids, and we're watching what the adults are doing. And certainly that's where we get a lot of the things embedded in our minds that we want to do. And I can tell you that's I got that initial desire to go to Hawaii is watching the match game with Gene Rayburn and seeing him give away trips to Hawaii. And I tell my grandma, I'm going to go there someday and I'm going to live there.
Yes. See how beautiful that is. So parents listening in, they're watching. And if you can bring some elders, maybe it's not something you can do right now, but have them on a Zoom call, share the stories. Elders, they're going to love to share the stories with
Yes.
your kids. And those are the living history that's going to give us what we need to get through what we're going through right now to the other side.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we can plant the seeds in these young minds in a good way to help them. Again, we talked earlier on about being the importance of education and getting educated and learning. And it's not all in books. A lot of times it's taking advantage of hearing the stories like you did of the people who have lived, before us and have traveled the road, so to speak, so that maybe we can avoid some of those same mistakes, those same pitfalls. So
yes, it brings emotion. It brings a face and somebody you care about that went through a living history. It brings that, so that when I read those history books, I was like, oh, wow. Okay, it wasn't just numbers and something I had to memorize for the teacher. It had people and faces and emotion. And that, I think, is what's kind of missing. All those important parts, everybody affected on every side of whatever happened in all these different stories of our history. And so when you bring that in, then it's interesting. The kids want to learn. They want to hear because you care about the characters. Imagine you're reading a book and you don't care about the characters. That wouldn't be such a good book.
No, that's no fun.
Yeah, but when you care about them, then you're like, well, this is important. I need to learn this because I don't want this to happen. And I cared about, it's a whole different way of teaching history for sure. Anyway, Larry, we are coming to the end of our talking time. So I'd love for you to share where people can get your book. Maybe hold your book up again so they can see the name of the book, how they can get a hold of it, and maybe where they can tune into your podcast as well.
There it is. Nobody knows. I just want you to think they do.
Yes.
And you can pick the book up pretty much anywhere. It's on Amazon or wherever. But my website is just nobodyknowslarrycamp.com. It's pretty simple. Yeah. So and I talk there about, it has my book, of course, and it shows my podcast episodes and different things like that. But, the bottom line is I just am somebody that's a positive person. I just try to, share that positive attitude that I have with other people. We're fortunate that when we relocated here 3 years ago, we were on I-15, which travels between Southern California and Salt Lake City. And that's pretty much where all of our friends and family are down south in the Phoenix area. But so we get a lot of visitors here. And when we bought our house, we bought one with a casita, if you know what that is,
yes.
Out in the back. And we have people there all the time. And it's so much fun for us to have people visit. So because I think maybe it's something about getting older, but we really enjoy having our friends and our family and new friends, that you make too, and just sitting around and visiting and talking. And, it doesn't have to be always going somewhere, always doing something. Those times are fun too, but just sitting around and sharing life experiences and, just talking like we've done today. Yeah. To me, that's one of my favorite things to do. So Sheila, I really appreciate you having me on your podcast, your show today, and for letting me just to talk about myself and to share and learn a little bit about you as well and your story.
All right. Thank you again, Larry. And for those tuning in, we'll be back after these messages. All right.
Thank you.
Necessitated. You need a guide to show you how we get through a situation like this, to give you resources and to help you get out of the emotional pea soup fog of dealing with a crisis and the resulting fallout. I've been there, and I'm here to help you. Out of the fog. If you weren't emotionally bound up in your situation, you would have more clarity. You would be able to see your best options for dealing with whatever comes up. If the version of yourself who has already walked through this rock bottom and come out the other end could go back in time and give you, the you right now, some advice, what would she say? Would she tell you to slow down, to stop rushing, that you don't have to have all the answers today? Would the future you recommend not making any major decisions without reviewing them first, particularly while you're still in the fog? Would she tell you that normal is going to look different for a while, but that you will feel normal again? In case we haven't invented time travel by the time you read this book, I'm here to tell you all of the above. I developed the Boots formula to help you learn to make choices, have a life shift, and make great things happen based on your individual values and best life vision. A change is going to happen, and it's worth it. There's a stage where it feels like everyone in your life is picking at you. Life itself may seem like it's trying its best to stop you from doing whatever you want to do. All you hear is, "That's a stupid idea," and "That's never going to work," and "Who do you think you are?" One of the hardest things for people to do is to realign and possibly walk away from anything and anyone that conflicts with their value systems. But you are going to discover that power within yourself. Through the activities and examples in this book, you will discover your true north and will be able to easily do what is needed to move forward with your life. Anything that hurts you, that doesn't resonate for you, that fights against what you want and believe in, you are going to give it the boot. Once you have turned your rock bottom moment into a positive, beautiful life shift, you can live your life on your terms. Your life will probably look different, but you get to design it this time. You are taking your life back, and you are in charge, not anybody else. Sooner than you can imagine, you'll be in the career of your dreams or the relationship you always wanted. Because you are going to learn to develop healthy boundaries. Because you are going to do things differently along the way from here to there. You will begin to attract the people, the job, the place to live, all of the opportunities that align with who you are, your essence, your truth, not anybody else's or even society's expectations of the way you're supposed to be. Once you have accepted that you are in charge of living your life and you begin to embody living your truth, people are going to see you. They're going to be inspired by you. Then you're going to hear, "Hey, can you show me how you did that? I want to do it too." When you assess your peer group and up-level according to your life purpose and vision, and once you have created a life shift for yourself, whatever that looks like, your life is not just full, it's fulfilled. Not only do you get more and better sleep, you wake up feeling rested and happy. You know that you're doing what you need to do. Yes, sometimes your heart will call you to leave certain friends or family members in order to find a more aligned peer group. From what I've seen, however, the ones who leave always return to lead their family and friends to success. Because your friends are more in alignment with your beliefs and value system, they support you while also pushing you toward your personal best. Life still involves work, but as a whole, it feels far more effortless. But you don't have to wait for the right person, right job, or right investment opportunity to show up. You can start living now so that every moment as you go forward through the process of recovering from rock bottom and redesigning your life is one more step to being the best version of you, the one who came.
All right, if you are looking to reinvent life on your terms, if you are grieving, experiencing financial turmoil, career shifts, relationship problems, parenting, elder care, victims of abuse, breaking free from an addiction, or seeking an overall business and lifestyle redesign, then you may need a reboot. It is not fits all, just like a pair of boots or a bra. So the formula is designed to help you through any situation. If you are just tuning in, this is NBC's Sheila Mack Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today I have a couple of announcements. First, I would like to hear from you. That's right.
I would love to hear from you. To be honest, I want to know what your breakthrough is, what your reboot is. How are you reinventing and rebooting your life? What shows would you like to hear more of? What information do you need to help you get back on track this year? And to do that, the best way to connect with me is actually through my new YouTube channel, and that is Sheila Mack Show on YouTube. And there you can see past recordings, and you can also see other information and shares that I have. And I would love for you to share in the comments there what you're needing more of and what you're rebooting this year and how we can help you get back on track. You need a guide to show you how we get through a situation like this, to give you resources and to help you get out of the emotional pea soup fog of dealing with a crisis and the resulting fallout. I've been there, and I'm here to help you.